All right, thank you for joining us today for our first Lunch and Learn session this school year. Today's topic will be focused on annual transition strategies for educators and family members because ultimately transition success begins with you. I have a lot of good information to share with you today, and I hope to make our time together as engaging as possible. My name is Melinda Luna, and I am a LaSard facilitator in the New Orleans area. For those of you unfamiliar with LaSard, it stands for Louisiana Autism Spectrum and Related Disabilities Project. We have a team of 11 facilitators across the state. We coach in school districts in Louisiana with a purpose and vision to build and sustain evidence-based practices and support students with disabilities. Our project is part of the Human Development Islands, where most of our Southern facilitators are based out of. So now let me tell you a little more about myself and why I am here presenting on this very important topic. So my husband and I, we live in St. Bernard Parish, and I have two incredible boys, Logan and Reed. Logan is 6 years old, and Reed is, he just made 10 months. So Logan was diagnosed with autism when he was 2, and he immediately started receiving early intervention services. After receiving ABA therapy for a few years, he was ready to transition to pre-K in the public school setting in St. Bernard. I think I was more nervous about this transition than he was because I knew just how difficult big transitions were to him or for him, especially a major transition like this one. So because he was transitioning from a center where he was receiving one-on-one therapy and all of the interventions incorporated his personal interests. And now he's going into a classroom with 15 plus kids where he would actually have to follow a grade level curriculum. So I knew from my personal and professional experience that in order for him to have a smooth transition to school, I needed to prepare him as much as possible on my end using a variety of practical strategies such as schedules, transition books, and most importantly, priming. I have used all of these strategies with him for his 2 big school transitions so far. So we have therapy to pre-K and then pre-K to kindergarten. And therefore, I know firsthand just how effective these strategies are for him, and they can be for other students who struggle with the same thing. So he is my why I'm here today, and I hope you can learn something from our story to use with your child or your student in preparing for an annual transition this year. So why are you here today? Because now is the time to think ahead about the upcoming school year and any changes that you anticipate for your child or student. The planning required for some students must occur in advance, and I'm saying April-May timeframe when the student is still in school from the previous school year. Typically, when we think about the transition to a new school level or a new grade, the end of the school year is the time to start asking those questions, scheduling those meetings, having those conversations about the following school year, because it's not always easy to get that information over the summer because most teachers are out and they're the ones who have most of the information that you need. And if you wait until August or the day before school starts or the morning of school starts to recognize those changes with your child, that's probably going to cause a big problem because at that point it's already too late. Transition planning needs to occur weeks and weeks in advance. So in the upcoming slides, we're going to discuss who does what when it comes to transition planning, when should it occur, and how to plan for annual transitions. Here are our goals for today. We only have 30 minutes together, so it's going to fly by, but we're going to talk about some very important topics and strategies. So we're going to explore some strategies for planning school transitions. I'm going to help you discover resources related to annual transitions, and then I'm also going to give you a few tools that you can use to build a plan to support your child or student with their transition. We do have some resources to share with you today that I will highlight throughout the presentation. You can access the resources by scanning the QR code with your phone, or you can click the link in the chat that Allie, who's another LaSard facilitator, she's gonna add in the chat box right now. This is just a handy environmental tip sheet that family members can use to start planning for their child's upcoming school transition. We're going to cover some of this information in detail today, but we strongly recommend all of these indicators just to set your child up for the beginning of the school year. As most of these, as you can see, are geared towards parents, educators can offer these same supports and strategies to their students for the upcoming school year as well. So for example, if you look at the last indicator, Instead of waiting for the parent to reach out and request a meet and greet, why don't you jump ahead of the game? You reach out to the family member now, schedule a personal meet and greet before the school meet and greet, or schedule a Zoom meeting just to kind of lay your eyes on the student, get to know him or her on a personal level. So as LaSARD facilitators, as we coach teachers and administrators across the state, our primary focus is teaching those evidence-based practices and helping the adults determine how to best implement them in school and sometimes in home environments. There are several essential support strategies that I'm going to share with you today, and I thought it would be helpful just to highlight them now, just to help you better understand the examples that I'm going to show in the next few slides. And I do want to note that all of these strategies are appropriate for all grade levels. So the first one is priming, and you actually have access to this priming strategy guide in the folder that I just shared. Priming is the absolute easiest strategy to implement, and it requires very little planning time and effort. Priming is just simply exposure to information or activities before they occur, giving the student time to anticipate and prepare for what's coming. You often want to use priming strategies when you know your child or student will have difficulty with something, such as a big school transition or that transition from summer break, a lot of fun going on, back to school where it's a structured setting. Because when we prime students for what's coming, that anxiety level will decrease, and it's much more likely that the student will be able to be successful in that environment. The next one is visual supports, and visual supports are specifically designed to provide information through a visual representation. Visual supports are just simply any visuals that provide important information, facilitate transitions, convey expectations, and provide understanding and predictability. When we think about annual transitions, the student may need a wide variety of visual supports to promote understanding of new routines and expectations, as well as to help them prepare for any challenging task ahead. The beauty of implementing a visual support is that they can be designed for almost any area of need. As you can see, behavior, academics, routines and expectations, and then also social communication skills. And I'm going to show you a few different types of visual supports that you can use in a few minutes. But first, I want to hear from you. Are you currently using any priming or visual supports with your child or student to support annual transitions? For me, I've just been verbally priming Logan that he's going to have a new teacher when he goes back to school in a few weeks, just because he absolutely loved his kindergarten teacher, probably more than he loved me on most days. So I know this is going to be a big change for him, and he's going to struggle with it at the beginning of the year because he's going to want to go to her class and not his first grade teacher's class. So I've just been verbally saying, hey, remember this year you're going to have a new teacher. Her name is this. And just that simple. It takes 20-30 seconds a day. Anybody else? Are y'all using any priming or visual supports right now with your child? You can respond in the chat or unmute your mic. All right, we have somebody that says she uses verbal priming too. Great. All right, so now let's talk about those visual support strategies. So the first one we have is a visual cue, and visual cues are concrete objects, pictures, symbols, or written words that provide a person with information about how to do a routine, how to do an activity, a certain behavior, or a skill. Now, we use visual cues every single day, even though you may not realize it. Community signs, grocery signs, or labels. When we go out to eat, looking at a menu. So those are just a few that we use day to day, but now let's look at some examples of how you can use them to support annual transitions. We all know how important it is for students to have a consistent routine and clear expectations across the day, whether it's at home or at school. The child needs to know, what are the rules? What are the daily routines and procedures that they need to follow to be successful? So when you think about that transition to a new school or a new grade level, your child's going to need to learn new expectations for the classes they're enrolled in. Now, to help your child get familiar with the rules now, reach out to their assigned teachers for next school year and request a copy of the classroom rules. The teacher may be able to just send you a picture that they took on their phone or maybe a Word document, but regardless, you have a copy and you can start priming them now of those rules and expectations. By doing this ahead of time, You can work on certain behaviors or skills that you know your child may struggle with. And you can make it a fun activity at home with flashcards or sticky notes, chalk outside where they're maybe working on memorization or matching them. You can also take pictures of your child demonstrating those expectations just to help serve as a visual reminder of what it should look like. So here are just two examples that we used last year with Logan in the school setting, but it's behaviors that we also work on at home, such as staying in your seat for dinner time and keeping your hands to yourself when doing certain things. So as you can see, as a parent, you can pull off some of those classroom rules and reinforce them at home just by incorporating visual cues and reminders. Now, if you're a teacher, again, jump ahead of the game. Send your parents a list of the classroom rules or procedures that they can start working on at home. Now, the district dress code may change from school to school, and it's important that your child is prepared for these changes before the school year begins. That's when you want to prime, remember that big word, prime your child about this change. You should be able to find your school's dress code policy on the website or student handbook if you don't have that information yet. Because just think as if your child was allowed to wear different colored shirts under their school shirt in elementary school. So they wore a green shirt every day because green's their favorite color. But looking at this dress code policy, the students can only wear white or a school designated color shirt now. Now, since some students struggle with change, you can address this expectation as a parent now instead of the morning that school starts. Can you imagine what kind of day your child would have? Or even worse, administration would be the one to tell your child something on the first day of school and absolutely ruin their first day. So again, jump ahead of the game, look at the dress code expectations if your child's going to a new school, and then start working on some of the changes heading their way. Now let's look at how you can use visual cues to support organization. So color coding school supplies and subjects is a great way to help kids stay organized. This school organization strategy will help make your child have the right school supplies when they need them. And it can also help them keep track of their materials that they need. So for example, when purchasing school supplies, which now is the time to do that, you would just buy purple folder, purple binder, purple notebook, all for English. And then for science, it would be green. For social studies, it would be blue, and so on. The only thing you want to think about with this is if the teacher already has a designated color in their classroom that they use for certain subjects. So you may want to reach out to them now to ask that, and then again, explain what you're trying to accomplish with this strategy. And if not, just go ahead, buy every color in the rainbow, and then identify or determine certain subjects for each color. Now, when starting off the school year in a new environment, you can also expect for unanticipated changes to occur several times throughout that first quarter. To help your child learn how to be flexible and be prepared for when changes occur, a change alert card can be used to teach this skill. Now, a change alert card is just simply a visual, as you can see on the slide, that can be used to reflect any changes in the daily schedule or individual routine. So anytime there is a change in your child's school routine, you can use this card to prime him or her for that change. So for example, I would often check Logan out of school every Monday afternoon at 3 to go to speech therapy. So the change alert card could say, instead of art class, we will see Miss Brittany, who's his speech therapist. Instead of having Miss Scott this year, which may have been the 3rd grade teacher, we will have Miss Regard this year, who's the 4th grade teacher. This change alert card can be downloaded for free on our website, and we will go over all of our website resources at the end of the presentation. Now, another type of visual cue to support annual transitions is a transition book. A transition book is used to familiarize the student with visuals of new people and environments they should expect to see at the beginning of the school year. So these are just 2 examples. As you can see, you can make a transition book for a younger child with just basic text and a few pictures, or you can make one for an older child with, you have a larger amount of text and maybe more pictures because they have a complicated schedule. You can request this type of support from your child's school, or at home, you can even make one yourself just by going to the school website. I'm sure you can find pictures of the teachers that they may have for the following school year, pictures of the cafeteria, pictures of the gym. That's what I did last year. I just reached out to Logan's kindergarten teachers and asked them if they could send me a picture of their classroom when they were done or ready for the school year to begin. And they did. And then I primed him. He saw where he was going to sit for morning circle, where he needed to put his school bag up when he walked in the classroom. So just starting those conversations now, and it all begins just by looking at different visuals. Now, we will have a Facebook Live video next week specifically talking about transition books, so stay tuned for that on our Facebook page. Now, since middle school and high school campus is a lot bigger than an elementary campus, you may want to use a school map just to help your child familiarize him or herself with the layout of the new school if they're transitioning to a new school. You can highlight the classrooms that your child is assigned to and other locations that they would visit on a regular basis. So as you can see with the map, you can review the route that they would take to get from one environment to the other. And by having this type of support over the summer, this will give your child time to learn the layout of his or her new school in anticipation that they would ever get lost during a transition. Now, that's a wrap for visual cues. There's so many more we can discuss, but we only have 30 minutes, so we need to keep chugging along. The next strategy type of visual support is a visual schedule. Now, a visual schedule is simply a tool that provides the child with information about a sequence of events set to occur. I'm sure your child's teacher already has a daily schedule for them to follow at school in their classroom, but what can you do now to start preparing them for that transition? Now, because of time, we're not going to go into visual schedules right now, but I did do a Facebook Live video last week. You can go and watch it, and it's a 5-minute clip all about visual schedules. And you can also learn about a few schedule templates that we have on our website that can be downloaded for free. So Allie's going to share that in the chat box, the direct link to the Facebook Live, but you can also find it on our Facebook page. Now, our last strategy is probably my favorite strategy for the beginning of the school year. It's an all about me. So an all about me is a worksheet, and it's a great way to share personal information and the individual's own words. There are many variations of an all about me activity that can be found online, but I've included just a few templates that can be used in the resource folder, depending on the age of your child. Now, this is actually one that I made myself, and I'm going to give you a little background story here. As any parent would, I had a lot of anxiety about sending Logan to public school for the first time in pre-K. I remember typing paragraphs and paragraphs of everything that I thought his pre-K teacher would need to know about him, since I wasn't going to physically be there in the classroom with him. He had limited verbal communication skills at the time, and it was often difficult for others to understand his wants and needs and what certain behaviors meant. So after looking at my 5-page report, and I'm not kidding, I realized that I may come off as that crazy parent if I gave that to his pre-K teacher. So I called one of my colleagues and I explained what I was trying to accomplish with this idea. She recommended pulling out the most important information and putting it into bullets. That way the information looked simplified and it was easier to read versus paragraph style. So I thought about the areas that my son and most kids with a disability struggle with and made this very helpful all about me template. So with this template, the parent can fill it out from the child's perspective, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in a moment, or actually have the child fill it out for their teacher to work on their self-advocacy skills if they're a bit older. So since that moment, I will always write an all about me for Logan for every grade level transition until he is old enough to write it by himself. So here is a completed copy of the All About Me that I sent to his teachers last year. And I do want to note that his teachers did not think I was that crazy parent after sharing the information with them. Instead, they were very appreciative of the information because they were able to prepare themselves for certain behaviors and how to address them in the classroom. When writing this from your child's perspective, you just want to think about those little quirky traits that you love about them, but it may be confusing to another person if they don't know what's going on. So I'm actually in the process of writing his All About Me for this school year. So in this year's version, again, this was for kindergarten. So in the first grade version, I just want to note a few things going on that his teacher need to be aware of, such as instead of saying just kidding, he will always say April Fools because he absolutely loves playing jokes on people these days. He absolutely knows that it's not April 1st and he does not care, but that's how he's going to communicate with you that he's playing a prank. I also need to know that he refers to anything about the past to yesterday. So even if something happened last year, he will say, hey, remember yesterday when we da 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 da? And I can see his teacher looking very confused when he starts talking about an activity from pre-K, which may have happened 2 years ago, but to him, it happened yesterday. So those are just some little quirky traits that I absolutely love about Logan, but to others, they're like, what is going on? What is he talking about? Now, here are 2 other All About Me templates that you can download in the resource folder. One is for a younger child, as you can see the one on the left, with personal information, just getting to know their favorite color, their picture, their favorite food. And then the other is for an older child, just to provide information to their teacher about his or her learning style and goals for the upcoming school year. So in summary, from our Lunch and Learn session today, I want you to utilize priming and visual supports to help plan for the transition back to school in the fall for your child or student. Remember, it doesn't matter if you're a parent or a family member, you can initiate those conversations and supports and strategies now. I want you, this is your homework for everybody joining us today. I want you to go and complete an All About Me worksheet to help your child's teacher learn more about him or her before the school year begins. So you can fill it out, email it to them, go and drop it off to the school, whatever your preference is. Just make sure you send it before school starts, not the day that school starts, because at that point it's too late. And I know what it's like being a teacher, and the first day is just absolutely chaos. And then finally, visit Lassard's website to access free resources that can be used at home, school, or in the community. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a moment. So our website is www.lassard.org. So we should have time at the end where I can walk you through the steps. But if you go to our website and click online resources, there's a drop-down tab. I think it's just resources. And then you have 2 categories, either educators and related service providers or family members. And then within each category, we have subcategories: school environment, behavior, communication, and social. So go ahead, all of these you can download for free and share them with anybody else you think that would be helpful for. Our next Lunch and Learn session is Friday, August 12th from 12 to 12:30, and it's going to be more about priming, like the steps to prime, and then classroom expectations. This webinar is going to explore ways to prime students for changes and challenges, as well as utilizing expectations to increase predictability and support understanding. We haven't promoted this webinar yet on our social media page, but since y'all joined us today, Allie will share that registration link in the chat box, so you can go ahead and save your virtual spot, and you can get notified that the webinar is getting closer, even though it's a month out. Are there any questions? I'm going to hang out for a bit. We have about 5 minutes. If you don't mind, please go ahead and take our Lunch and Learn survey. We would love to hear feedback from you. We have topics scheduled throughout the school year. So if there's any specific, anything specifically that you want us to present on, we will try and wrap it into the topics we have already identified. So that is the QR code you can scan with your phone, or Allie's going to share the link in the chat box. And then this is my information. Again, my name is Melinda Luna. My email is mluna1@lsuhsc.edu. If you have any questions, or if you would like me to help you kind of brainstorm different resources to help your child. So I'll go back to that QR code, but I am here if you have any questions for the next few minutes. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that everybody has a great transition to the beginning of the school year.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. I enjoyed that. Are you going to be presenting at the Powering Up Early Childhood Conference this next
that is for the meeting at the.
Yes, we are presenting next Friday on building a communicative environment for pre-K classrooms.
Okay. All right. I'll be looking for that. I enjoyed the one from the last conference. So that's how I, you know, are familiar with your work. And I am a educational coach for CCR&R. And I'm also a Nana that my grandchildren live with me and my grandson's going to be transitioning to pre-K. So thank you so much for these tips.
Oh, no problem. Well, I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Okay. All right.